I think we'd all rather watch football than talk football. So watching football leads to talking football, and definitely we want to watch football because is what we've been waiting to do for so long rather than talking football all this time. But this would be a night when it's probably more enjoyable to talk football than watch football based on what we've been given tonight between BYU, not their fault, and Navy, their fault. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, taking your calls on a Memorial Day night following what we thought was going to be the first semi big game of the season involving an independent in BYU that has scrapped together an 8-game schedule, and Navy out of the American Conference, and Coach Ken Niumatalolo, who has done, of course, an outstanding job in becoming Navy's all-time winningest coach, but this has not been one of his better nights. Actually, this could be argued to be his worst night, worst day, worst time, worst game, worst experience at Navy in his 13 years and going 90-69 there at the academy. Because Coach Niumatalolo, of course, has done an outstanding job, but he made a critical mistake in terms of football. We may discuss that in regards to his approach to tonight's game and the season. BYU has just been flat dominant. I don't even know if dominant. I think the word dominant is used way too often. I think the word dominant is probably undervalued in this game. 48-3. It could be probably 80-3 at this point because BYU has taken out its starters. Quarterback Zach Wilson played just into the third quarter. It was 31-0 at half. At one point in the game, Navy, with the vaunted ground attack that typically leads the nation in rushing or is in the top 3, along with the other 2 service academies, was averaging 1.9 yards per carry against BYU's 12.1. Let that sink in. BYU at last look had well over 500 yards of total offense, and that's with taking the foot off the throttle. And, of course, Navy has been blown away. Consider this as well. BYU, of course, like everybody else, had an original 12-game schedule that included, Stanford, Minnesota. Who else was on that schedule? Their typical fare of Pac-12 games against some good teams in the Pac-12. Don't remember exactly. Boise State, Houston was on BYU's schedule, as well as Utah, the Holy War rivalry. All those games were knocked out except for one, and that had to be rescheduled. So they had to scrap together a schedule. Now, in reviewing BYU's schedule, which is typically the oddest schedule in college football, BYU, I say this every year, and I typically rank the schedules from 75 all the way up to number 1 in the nation in the Power 5 plus the independents, that BYU typically has the oddest schedule because their September, early October schedule looks like the most vaunted murderer's row in college football. Typically, the best teams in the Pac-12, and then a Big Ten, 1 or 2, a Big 12 matchup, and maybe a Boise State, but then everybody else goes into their silos in the conference, and BYU has to scrap together the remaining 6 or 7 games, and it's a lot of Wagner and low-level Mountain West teams and Liberty and whomever they can find to play. An FCS school may be in there as well. So it's a strange schedule. But this schedule, after facing on paper, this was the best team that BYU was facing this year. And they've got an 8-game schedule. So BYU has a legitimate shot to go undefeated at 8-0. But, of course, they wouldn't have any quality wins to have any reasonable argument to make a college football playoff with the schedule that they've had to piece together. 48-3, we're into the fourth quarter, and it's been a ho-hum affair. Actually, the first game I was looking forward to really sitting down and watching. And within a couple series, BYU's dominance, especially along the offensive front and really the defensive front in dominating the Navy triple option attack. It was one of those deals when we all know in major college football, you'll see a team jump out 14-0, and it's no big deal. Sure, it's an advantage, and they may have the upper hand and be the better team on that day or just be the better team, period. So it's a good indication. But 14-0, hey, we may still have a game. Keep watching. In this case, I think we could all see the physical dominance of BYU and that this was not going to be a game. Navy's had to replace one of the better quarterbacks in the nation rushing the football, of course, in Malcolm Perry, who has signed and made the Miami Dolphins roster at running back. Again, BYU had 10 of its 12 games canceled, 1 game moved, had to come up with a new schedule. The Mountain West and the Pac-12 oriented schedule for BYU has been wiped out. Ken Niumatalolo made the decision not to hit, not to tackle, not to have close contact in practice. And that hurt significantly. How much? We'll never know, of course. Maybe BYU is just this much better than Navy. I doubt it. I'm sure that had something to do with it. You can't just not hit since last, I think, New Year's Eve. New Year's Eve would be the last time that Navy hit anyone. It was Kansas State in a bowl victory. Navy doesn't get taken apart like this by the likes of BYU. It just doesn't happen. I looked at the numbers, looked at the scores over the last 7 or 8 seasons, and typically Navy competes. Do they win most of the Power 5 matchups? No. They lose probably 2/3 of those, but they have defeated Virginia and Pitt and Indiana and even a game against Notre Dame a few years ago, 28-27. So they do win these games probably 1/3 to 50% of the time against the likes of a BYU, and they were completely outclassed, coming off an 11-2 season that followed a 3-10. So I took notes in the first quarter, and they really don't much matter. BYU dominated, and we'll have to see what they have. But who's going to watch BYU the rest of the year? This is the best game they've played. They've got Army next. That could be competitive. Of course, Army coming off a 42-0 drubbing of Middle Tennessee State. So here we are, MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. We invite you to bring your comments, your questions, and your debate topics into the live chat. Please support the channel any way you see possible. Of course, start by hitting the like button. Also, leave your comments in the live chat. Also, comment to any of the videos. If you've got 5 minutes to waste, just go down all my videos, the last 8 or 10, and just like them. It means so much. I don't know why. I don't know how. I don't know exactly the algorithms, but that's all I know is that YouTubers say you need likes in the videos, and that helps. It's not the only determinant, but helps push the videos into the suggested videos. So we want to get my videos here at the Voice of College Football. We want to get our videos into the suggested videos. Because then once they're suggested there, just think about the videos you watch on YouTube. What do you watch? I'm sure you got your favorite channels. Wink, wink, right here. Of course, this is at the top of the list. But you got your favorite channels, and you go to them and the ones that are recommended for you. But typically, you look off to the right, whether you're on your phone or on a laptop, and you look to the right and you see those suggested videos, and something catches your eye, and you go to that. It's called click-through rate. And that's where you want those videos to be placed. So what generates that is some combination of people watching the video. So the more views you get, the more you get pushed to the suggested videos. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, basically. It's a rock rolling downhill, a snowball coming down the hill that gains momentum. And then it also has to do with how well those videos are received. So even if 100,000 people watch a video, but they just click on the video because it's clickbait because of the title, but it's not a good video, so they don't watch it for long, well, YouTube's not going to push that video because nobody's watching it. It's a 10-minute video that's watched on average 25 seconds. Well, we don't have that issue here because of your support, your generosity in watching the videos, taking in the content, valuing the content. Our duration of view is astronomical. It's insanely good. It's like over 10.5 minutes per video. So thank you for that. That helps. The likes, the comments, all of that. So thank you so much for supporting. And of course, the super chat is available as well. Let's get to the calls and get the number to the screen, because I'd like to look at the news of the day, because we've got some interesting news and notes in college football. Of course, not a whole lot to talk about here, but certainly if you want to talk about BYU and Navy down the road or what happened tonight, we can discuss that. I was intently watching the first half. Just had my eye on the second half because it obviously meant nothing at that point. And of course, took down all these notes. What a big day we have planned on Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, on Tuesday, 2 o'clock Eastern time. We're going live with Miami UAB talk, previewing the game between the Canes and the Blazers, 2 o'clock Eastern time. Tomorrow with a wholesome one, Miami football talk at 2 o'clock Eastern time. At 3:15, okay, you're not going to be able to watch this live. This is going to be a recorded segment, but just to let you know that coming is the 10-minute war with Steve Dace, Michigan podcast, and myself, breaking down the Big Ten, the COVID situation, what's next. Is there going to be a vote? The Michigan uprising led by Jim Harbaugh against President Mark Schlissel. We will break that down. That's going to be available at Michigan Podcast and also here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. I will post another schedule breakdown and game-by-game prediction, as I've got 3 teams left to do in the ACC, Florida State, Miami, and Notre Dame. No, I did Notre Dame. Miami, Florida State, and Clemson. Notre Dame was just released earlier tonight. We had 3 videos released today, all game-by-game predictions of ACC teams. I believe Georgia Tech, Notre Dame, and somebody else this morning. So we've got Florida State, Miami, and Clemson left to do. And those will be coming out tomorrow. Florida State football fans and everybody who joins us, college football fans, on our Florida State live stream each and every Tuesday. Programming note here that I will send out the notification on. We're going live at 6 o'clock tomorrow night. 6 o'clock tomorrow night for Florida State football talk. At 7:30 tomorrow night, 7:30 Eastern time, we're doing a huge ACC preview with Mike McDaniel from ESPN Blacksburg, also SI.com, and also a number of guests joining us to preview the ACC. Big ACC preview special tomorrow night at 7:30 Eastern time. That's why it's imperative for you to subscribe. Hit the bell for the notifications. That way you know when we're going live, and also are privy to the community page in which I post all our live stream schedule. All right, so that's tomorrow. 2 o'clock Eastern time, Miami UAB preview live. 6 o'clock Florida State live with the Seminoles taking on Georgia Tech on Saturday. And then at 7:30, ACC preview live. And then I'm also going to be on the Knoll Game Day Florida State preview tomorrow night about 9:45. I don't know exactly where to find that. I would think that it's at knollgameday.com, but we will find out from our guy Logan Robinson tomorrow. There's the number 860-325-3687. Check out my game-by-game predictions and have some fun with those. I would love to get the rest of the ACC done. That will happen for sure. And then the Big 12 by Saturday. That could be tough. I found this bit of news interesting. Did you see where Southern Miss's head coach, Jay Hobson, who's had a decent run there at Southern Miss, 4 consecutive winning seasons, 3 bowl games, stepped down after 1 game? It was an upset loss to 2-touchdown underdog South Alabama, a game in which they looked listless. They looked unprepared to a certain extent. They didn't have a whole lot of fire. They've got more talent than South Alabama, and they lost by double digits. And it wasn't necessarily that close. What's interesting to read in this article posted by ESPN, and I'm sure others online, is that Jay Hobson wanted to hire Art Briles as his offensive coordinator at the end of 2019, so at the end of last season. And he publicly supported, understood the call by the university. Let's see if it was who in the university in particular. And this could have been the undoing of the situation and the relationship right here. Before the 2019 season, not after, before the 2019 season, Jay Hobson interviewed former Baylor coach Art Briles for the offensive coordinator job The school later issued a statement saying Briles was not a candidate and would have no further statement in comment. And that's understandable from the standpoint of the school, saying we don't want to deal with this, regardless of whether he's a great coach, great offensive mind, and deserves, or really, I don't know if anybody deserves a second chance, but we should all be given second and third and fourth chances, I believe. I can understand a school saying, you know what, even if he's the best out there, go for the second best, and we can still call plays and run an offense with the second best guy that's not going to be the headache that he's going to bring. So I get the school's conviction here. But Hobson released his own statement saying that it was the university president Rodney Bennett's decision not to hire Briles. Hobson said he respected his president's decision, but that he disagreed with it and that Briles deserved a second chance. So it kind of seemed like that was the underlying disconnect, the underlying bad blood that was created between Hobson and the president of the university. And so as soon as Hobson faltered, meaning coming off 4 consecutive losses, 3 at the end of last year, and then the first loss to open against the 2-touchdown underdog at home in South Alabama, a 2-10 team that had the nation's longest road losing streak, they took the opportunity to say, see ya. We've got a bad relationship anyway, and you're starting to lose football games. So that's what happens. Losing football games is primary to somebody getting fired. But if you have a bad relationship in place, the losing certainly doesn't need to get to the same level that it normally would if you have good relationships in place and the losing occurs, and then it's see you after going 2-10 and 2-10. But you don't need to get to that point, or it doesn't generally happen that way if you've got another issue involved, plus the losing, and see ya. All right, 860-325-3687. Let me look at the live chat and see what you guys have for me. And I set this for 11:30 tonight thinking, okay, we may have a good game and we'll go on right at the end of the game or near the end of the game. And typically what we do during the college football season, if you watched last year and the year before, is it's nice to come on here maybe if it's a nice 34-31 kind of game and watch the last couple drives together and set up the drama and watch the drama together, and then go into the post-game show and take your calls. But with this mess going on, I should have gone on earlier. Actually, we've only got 35 on the line. We had about 170 last night at one point. So I appreciate the call-in shows. The more that I do, the more you guys are catching on and have the notifications all lined up. And I apologize that we typically don't know when we're going live, but you guys have stayed on your toes, taken the notifications, and come on here. But I'm guessing we're a little bit light tonight because I'm officially not supposed to go live for another 12 minutes. But I wasn't going to wait for this mess to end. Bo Weevil, Navy looks so unprepared you can't practice without tackling. True. Football is blocking and tackling first and foremost, maybe not as primary to the sport today as it was 30 years ago, but it's still fundamental. Navy needs to send up the white flag. Pete Digits, good to see you. I really don't think you need to wait until the game is over to begin, Mark. We get it. Some teams are ready, others aren't. You just hope it's not your team. So, yeah, we'd rather be watching football than talking football, but this is certainly a night when the watching or the talking of the football is more enjoyable than the watching of the football, because basically it's nice to have college football back. Obviously, all of us love college football or we would not be here. And it's great to have college football back, but we have yet to see a good game. We've seen a couple decent games, but look at the afternoon games on Saturday, 59-0, 42-0. Then we had a couple decent games at night that were good games, not down to the wire, not great games. Texas State put up a fight against SMU. Arkansas State put up a fight against Memphis. But then the better teams took hold in the fourth quarter, and there was no drama there. But they were decent games. Better games than they were supposed to be as 3-touchdown spreads, point spreads. But we've yet to take in a really good game. And now we've got this 55-3. So we've had about 7 or 8 college football games to date, and we're still waiting for the one to say, okay, this is college football. It's back. It pays off. There's a comment we make from time to time out there that college football always pays off. It always delivers. Well, it doesn't. No sport, nothing, no entertainment, nothing always delivers. NBA fan, good to see you. Yes, like the video. Thank you, Pete Digits. Cheryl, hey, how you doing? I'm going to get to that moderator thing one of these times when I figure out where it is, and it moves up from number 37 on the to-do list. But I'll get to that because we got NCIS Fanatic 21, Cheryl, Trevor have all agreed to be moderators, and I need them to help support the channel and obviously weed out a few of the stragglers that make their way in here and say some nasty things, which doesn't happen a whole lot. So thank you all for keeping it clean. Trash talk we love. We love the trash talk. So don't pull up on the trash talk, but let's not offend anyone with all the hot button issues that we could be going to. Jordan, good to see you. I'm sure many people wish they knew Navy never scrimmaged or tackled before placing their bets. Yeah, this was a pick'em game or something close to that within 3 points. Ouch. We're down to 48 seconds, and BYU, if they have any mercy, is just going to try to run out the clock, but they may have to run a play here. So they may kneel down at the 5-yard line. Yes, they will. Victory formation for BYU, where they could score and make it 62-3, but there's no reason to do that. McD, good to see you. David, all week I heard how BYU does not do well in the first game of the season. One thing we must learn from this weekend is past stats do not matter when it comes to betting these games. And also past seasons don't matter a whole lot because the only person that's still in play is typically the head coach and some of the coaching staff. I would have to see how BYU has fared in openers in the past. Nothing necessarily comes to mind there, David. Let's see. Last year, BYU lost to Utah 30-12 in the opener. That game was really close in the third quarter. Then they got blown out. And, of course, Utah finished 11-3, and they were a top 10 team most of the year before slumping late, losing to Oregon and Texas. So BYU was not the team that Utah was. So them losing 30-12 in what was a close game most of the way is to be expected. BYU was a 7-6 team last year. 2018, BYU beat Arizona 28-23 in the opener. In 2017, they beat Portland State 20-6 in the opener before they went to LSU. That game was actually in New Orleans, and they lost 27-0. In 2016, BYU beat Arizona 18-16. I remember that game. 2015, BYU beat Nebraska 33-28. That was the Hail Mary. I can't think of the quarterback's name at BYU. He became a bit of a legend based on that Hail Mary, and then he beat Boise State the next week, and I can't remember the kid's name. I'm getting bad. This was only 5 years ago. You'd like a couple nice seasons. BYU went 9-4 that year. They lost to Utah in the Vegas Bowl. BYU beat Connecticut in 2014 in the opener, 35-10. So I don't know that BYU necessarily plays poorly in openers. They're (5-1) the last 6 years. David, good to see you. Maybe Navy can get things cleaned up over a few games. Yeah, they've got to deal with a tough American conference. So they're going to see a lot of teams that are similar to BYU in terms of quality of play. A lot of teams in that range. Navy, very strange over the last 2 years that they went 11-2, won a bowl game against a Power 5 team, finished in the top 25 the year before, 3-10. Ken Niumatalolo's worst season in Navy in 13 years, but then they bounced back. Dennis. JC on the line. Army might beat the Mormons next week. Possibly. George. This is George typically making his statement that he's got to move on, that he's going to check in. He's going to like the video, but he doesn't have time for us. Can't stay. I just wanted to mention only 8 people liked the video out of 30 people so far. That's a party foul. Yeah, bring your own like. Guess that would be. I've definitely enjoyed the comments from Anthony JCP in recent weeks. We're on the eve of the biggest vote of the Big Ten. So we will need to cover that, of course. I don't know that I'm going to have time. I've got to have time. I wonder when that vote is. Do we have a time on that vote? We are swamped. I don't know if most of you were around when I gave out Tuesday's schedule. 2 o'clock Eastern time, we're talking Miami football live on Tuesday. 2 o'clock Eastern time, Miami UAB prep. 6 o'clock, Florida State live. It's typically at 7 Eastern, needs to be at 6 on Tuesday night. Tomorrow, Florida State live. Of course, all college football fans, you're all welcome to all the live streams involving all the teams. We've got fan bases from all over the place, all over the country. 7:30 tomorrow night, ACC preview. 7:30 Eastern time. Lisa, I turned this game on for like a second, and it was 31-0 BYU, and I turned it back to the show that I usually watch at night. I have been finding it really hard to get interested in watching college football without getting to watch my Buckeyes play. I might just turn it on to see what the score is and see how they are. Yes, I get it. You got your fans that only like to watch their own teams play. Yes, what is the Big Ten's excuse going to be tomorrow? Because we've got to understand that vote was 11-3, and I don't know that a whole lot has changed except for the heat and the pressure from the public. That's the only thing that's changed from the 11-3 vote. The information's no different. They may and will present the information in a way, if the vote reverses, if it flips in favor of playing, the Big Ten is certainly going to need to save face to say, well, the information has changed and we have different new information, and we've discussed that, and will tomorrow with Steve Dace, Michigan podcast. Tulsa, Oklahoma State, yeah, I just saw that, postponed until next week. So that game moves from this Saturday to the next Saturday. I don't know if that was a Tulsa issue or OK State issue in regards to positive tests. I am sorry to see that, Cheryl. That is awful. Anthony, Illinois fan. We've got an Illinois fan here. I love knowing that we've got fans of teams that don't compete for conference championships and they're not in that stratosphere. College football playoff talk all the time. McD with Maryland, Michael Hogue, Purdue, Anthony JCP now with Illinois. Trying to think who else roots for teams that aren't really in the mix. We had our Pitt caller last night. Sandra, good to see you. Lisa. Here we go. Troy DuPont, what's your thoughts on Pitt football, and do you think they could be legit contenders? I think that they could have been legit contenders under the typical Coastal and Atlantic format. So follow me here. We've got one big ACC right now with 15 teams. And we have one team that's going to almost assuredly have a conference championship game position. That's Clemson. So we're playing for one conference championship game spot. And we've now allowed Notre Dame to enter the league. So unless something proves it different, Notre Dame's the second best team in the league. I'm not saying for sure they're going to the conference championship game, but most likely they are. Clemson is like a 90-some% certainty of making the conference championship game, and Notre Dame's probably at 50-some percent, 50, 60%. They've been the second best team in the ACC. I know they're not in the ACC, but if you make that transition and consider them an ACC team, they've been the second best team in the league for the last couple of years. They basically played a ACC championship game against Clemson 2 years ago in the playoff. That's what it should have been. And we would have been spared that playoff game 30-3, and then we would have had Oklahoma and Ohio State playing. All right, so back to Pitt, is that Pitt is in the mess with everybody else. They're not at the bottom. They're not at the Clemson top, of course, and they're most likely not in the next tier, which is North Carolina. For me, it's Clemson by themselves. It's Notre Dame kind of by themselves at this point, and it's North Carolina and maybe Louisville, Miami, Florida State, and then you've got your Pitt. They might be the best of the rest. I think that Pitt is most likely going to be better than Georgia Tech, NC State, Duke, even Virginia. I forgot about Virginia Tech. So Pitt's about the 6th or 7th best team in the conference. I went through my game-by-game predictions, so check those out. But I clearly stated that, my goodness, this Pitt team, like everybody else in the ACC Coastal, and I know there's not a Coastal division this year, but I'm talking about those teams, they all can beat each other. And then throw in NC State, Boston College, Syracuse, everybody, Louisville, everybody to a certain extent from the other division, and it's unlike any other conference in college football. You got 10 teams that can beat each other all the time. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's McPhee Sports Boy. How are you doing?
I'm good. Disappointing to see some bad football tonight, but that's what we got.
Yeah. I only watched the first half of that game, so I don't even know what happened in the second half.
Yeah, you didn't need to know what happened. It was just basically a scrimmage after that.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was going to end up. At least it didn't get shut out, though. I mean, if you got a field goal on the board. Mark, the reason why I'm calling you is because I want to get your honest opinion on something. So the Big Ten is voting tomorrow at 2 p.m. Do you think that their vote to have the season or not to have the season? Honest opinion.
Well, you know what my opinion is about what the vote should be. You know that.
Do you think they'll do it, though?
I've been talking about that for months. I see no reason not to play football.
I agree with that, but do you think that they're going to vote yes or no? I think they need 6 votes or something like that. So they already have like 3 of them.
Yeah. So you're saying 6 out of 14 is going to get it done? I need to look that up. They can't. I would think that they would have to have at least a 7-7 vote.
They just need 6 supposedly.
Okay.
That's what I heard.
All right. I'll have to look into that. So they need to sway 3 more. So we had Nebraska, Iowa, Ohio State the first time. From what I hear, yeah, there's a few other schools. Northwestern, there was some talk on social media that Northwestern had kind of changed its tune recently, and Penn State. So I would think that they're right there. It's going to be close.
I would think the Indiana schools will vote yes.
Well, that would do it right there. I just, the information is no different, and I don't care how they come out and try to sway it and spin it, because they're going to, of course, try to make themselves look like there was some kind of big revelation that caused them to, and we don't care about that. We just want to see them do the right thing and play football. and when I say the right thing, there's no right or wrong here to a certain extent, but the Big 12, the ACC, and the SEC have all the same stipulations in place, and they're playing football. Teams are playing football. We've seen 7 or 8 games already played safely. There's no reason not to play football, and we all know it. And all the medical issues and other issues are going to be the same in the winter, in the spring, and any other time that they would be playing football. So they need to get on the field in October so that they can catch up with everybody else and compete for a college football playoff spot. So I think it's 50-50. The optimist in me thinks that there's been enough public pressure put on by people like us, and of course the parents have organized, and the players and all of that, hopefully, and if anything, the almighty dollar, maybe have actually gone to their budgets and determined, hey, maybe this actually matters. Most of us complain, and have complained for years, about money ruling college athletics, and especially football. This would be one time it would be nice, actually, if money mattered more. It's insane, the decision that's being made.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I know the University of Maryland's going to vote no on it, because I'm not going to go after the president, because I already have already. But I don't think the Terps are going to vote yes on it. But my question is, not my question. Do you think? Well, it's kind of a question. Do you think the teams that vote no, like I think Maryland's going to vote no on this? Do you think they just sit out the season? Saying like, oh, we're going to sit out the season, like Old Dominion sitting out the season this year, but the rest of the teams in that conference is playing.
That's an interesting point that you make there, because we were having this discussion with somebody last night that called in about, at what point do you draw the line in, okay, you belong to a league, you belong to a conference, and basically you're making an agreement to say, we'll take the good with the bad. We're not going to agree with every vote on everything, but we see the benefit of joining these other schools to be in this conference, of course. And we're not going to get our way all the time, so we're going to be loyal to the league and whatever's voted on. Well, in that case, those universities are basically should be on the flip side of all these schools that have had to have a no vote thrown in their face to say, you're not playing football, we're canceling the season. On the flip side, schools like Maryland, it should be on them to say, you know what, the league has decided we're playing football. Get your team prepared to play football.
I agree with that. The reason why I asked is because we had to stop our 20-hour workout sessions because of COVID testing. We had too many positive tests. Yeah. September 8th, which is actually tomorrow, they're going to test everybody, and as long as everything's okay, they're going to go ahead and start back up the workouts. Jim Harbaugh said that they proved that he needs 2 weeks to go ahead and start games. If that's the case, and if that's the way all the coaches are saying, all the Big Ten head coaches, if they just need 2 weeks, they should be starting the season, in my opinion, on the 26th, if that's the case, and play a 10-game schedule.
September 26th. They're not going to start September 26th. I understand Jim Harbaugh said his team can get ready in 2 weeks, but he's one guy out of 14.
But if they all say that, I think they should.
I don't think they're all going to say that. And like you just stated, Maryland has been sitting out. Michigan State had to sit out for a while. I think Purdue had to sit out for a while. Somebody else in the West, Iowa or somebody. Rutgers. Are they still in the Big Ten? Okay. Yeah, Rutgers. I just don't think that they're all going to be prepared in 2 weeks. I get his point that, and I back and support his fervency to say, hey, we're ready to go. We've been practicing. I need 2 weeks. We're ready to go. I just don't see it all coming together that quickly. they've got time. They've got time. They need to get this done, and thankfully that they're voting tomorrow. And the latest that they can hit the football field is October 24th. But I think that October 10th, which is 2 weeks after the date you're throwing out there, so that's 2 weeks later, is a perfect day to get going. Give themselves enough flexibility in the schedule to move games, postpone games, make them up, do the whole thing, and we can have the Big Ten on the field competing with everybody else. I'm going to feel so much better about this college football season with, again, we would like to have everybody involved, including the Pac-12, and we can take all the jokes about the Pac-12, but they're not going to compete for a national title. So if we're going to have one more league jumped into it, of course, the Big Ten would be the league that most people would want. And it's going to feel almost like a real season now.
Yeah, because I mean, it's going to suck not watching Pac-12 games, but yeah, it's going to feel like a real season. And you said Northwestern had a change of tune yesterday.
That's what I've read. That's what I've read.
Okay. Then I think what you're going to see is, I think you're going to see it have them have a season probably starting on either October 3rd or 10th with an 11-3 vote, with the 3 schools not voting against it. It's going to be Rutgers, Maryland, and Minnesota, because I heard Minnesota doesn't want to have the season either. So that's what I think we're going to see. I think everybody else votes for the season, including Michigan and Michigan State. So
you think this is going to be a pretty heavy yes vote?
I think it is, because I think public pressure, and if they vote no on this, the Big Ten will never recover from this.
Well, I think that might be a little bit strong, but we are just a couple days from seeing 2 Power 5 conferences in play, and they're going to be able to play. We've only seen 1 game. Well, now we've seen 2 games postponed. TCU, SMU, and now Oklahoma State, and whoever they were playing, Tulsa.
That got postponed. The second one, Oklahoma State, Tulsa.
Yes, but they've only moved. They didn't cancel, like TCU and SMU canceled, at least for the time being. Oklahoma State and Tulsa just backed it up a week, so they're going to play the next week.
Oh, so they're playing on the 19th. Okay.
Yes.
I didn't know that. So
yeah, that just came out.
But I think you're going to see it overwhelming. I really do. I'll be surprised if they vote no, honestly. And I'll be shocked if it's the same vote, 3-11, 11-3 against having a season. Because if they really want to sit there and go ahead and not have the season, I don't think the Big Ten's ever going to recover from this, and the Pac-12 is not going to recover from this either. So, and it's tomorrow at 2 p.m. to vote. So, gotta keep an eye on that. But Mark, thanks for taking my call. Go Terps. I think we'll have a season. Hopefully they stay with the same 10-game schedule, and we'll kick Iowa butt in week 1. Have a nice night.
See you, McD. Appreciate it. Says a lot about the Pac-12 in a number of ways. That, number one, they canceled. Nobody was surprised. People were shocked about the Big Ten to a certain extent. Nobody was surprised about the Pac-12 canceling. And also, the backlash has been non-existent. So that says a lot about the apathy concerning Pac-12 football and the mindset of Pac-12 football players, coaches, and I believe the players and coaches are just as fervent and passionate and committed in the Pac-12. I'm not going to make that call about the players and the coaches themselves, but everybody else surrounding the fan bases. Again, I made this comment in the past. I know Pac-12 fans who are just as football crazy, passionate, committed, loyal to their teams, but there just aren't as many of them, I don't believe. And I think that's already known and being proven out here during this time. It's seen in the TV ratings. It's seen in the stadiums. It's seen on social media. It's now seen throughout this situation. Lon Phillips joining us in the live chat to point out that BYU lost its opener in 2017. Actually, that was not BYU's opener, as we pointed out in looking at the game by game, but sure, 27-0 in New Orleans. I thought that game was in Houston, but it was in New Orleans. Oh, yes, 28 AD 28. I didn't take my research all the way back to 2009, but I certainly remember that game well. I believe it was played at Cowboys Stadium. Sam Bradford knocked out. Of course, Oklahoma was coming off a national championship game appearance against Florida, and I believe was the preseason #1 or 2 team in the nation, and that pretty much shut it down for them. We've got David asking, do you think the overall lack of preparation for this college football season will generally benefit the offense or the defense? In general, most yardage is gained through the passing game. So I don't know exactly what the numbers are, but I would be safe in saying that if you took all of college football, and especially if you eliminated the 3 academies that throw the ball about 10 to 15% of the time, that teams throw it about 55% of the time. 55-45. That number is flipped in the last 10 or 15 years. 55-45 pass in terms of the play calls. In terms of the yardage gained, typically teams are throwing for 250, 270 per game. I think if you took the average of college football from top to bottom, again, eliminate the academies because they play a different style, you're at the 250 to 270 range in yardage gained in passing versus runnings more in the 150 range. So about 2/3 of your yardage is through the air. And it takes more coordination and more cooperation. When I say coordination, I'm not talking about physical coordination. I'm talking about coordination between offensive line, snap, quarterback, decision-making, throwing the ball, catching the ball, route running, all that has to be coordinated to complete a pass downfield versus handing it off or versus playing defense. Sure, we're going to see missed tackles because of the lack of preparation, and we're going to see blown coverages and assignments because of that. So it's a good argument, but I'm going to go with the offense being a little less. We've already seen how many shutouts. Basically call this a shutout because it was a shutout. They scored 3 points. So technically not a shutout, but they didn't score a touchdown. They didn't score until it was well out of hand. So we have seen 3 shutouts in college football with all the scoring, the passing, the spread offenses that have gone crazy in recent years. We've already seen 3 shutouts in like 7 games. So, and we haven't seen any crazy scores yet. 42, 38, nothing in that range. Everything's been in the 20s and 30s, except for the teams that are crushing the other teams. But the competitive games have been 37-27, whatever the other Texas State SMU game was, like 31-28, 31-21, something like that. So I'm going to go with the offense not being able to coordinate the passing game, where it makes most of its chunk plays and plays downfield that result in scoring. The run is used to control the game. The pass is used to put points on the board and score the ball, as they say. Score the ball. Tanner Mangum, thank you. I have been so bad about forgetting. You know how, have you ever gone to a class reunion and you'll see either names and you forget what the people look like, but usually it's that you remember a face. If they haven't changed too much, you remember a face, but you can't remember the name. And he was number 12, I believe, Tanner Mangum, because I could picture him. I could picture the pass against Nebraska that got tipped around in the end zone and brought down for the game-winning touchdown on the Hail Mary. And then they beat Boise State 2 weeks later in a comeback win. Yes, Tanner Mangum. But I'm getting. I couldn't think of Malcolm Perry last night. So I liken that to the class reunion where you see people from school that if you were in ninth grade and somebody said, you're going to forget who this person is, you're like, they weren't my best friend, but I saw them every day and we were on good terms and we had a good time and we would go out to whatever together and see each other. And sure, I'm always going to remember this person. 20 years later, no recollection of the person. So it's kind of like that with me and names. And this is a bad thing. This is not good to have a college football show and I'm forgetting people that, it's one thing to forget somebody that you watched play one game or, there were players in this game. Let's see, the players that I wrote down. Am I going to remember these players? This BYU running back, Tyler Algier, had a huge game. He had a 34-yard touchdown run in the first quarter, and I didn't see his final numbers, but he had a huge game. Lopini Katoa had the first touchdown of the game from 39 yards. Now, Zach Wilson is the quarterback at BYU. I'm going to remember him. But just to have all these names in my head and to forget names of players, like take any team in the country that's somewhat prominent. Take LSU. And if we went year by year from 2019 backwards, we would have to go into the 1970s, maybe even into the 1960s before they had a quarterback that I didn't know who he was. Then you would be like, 1968 John Smith. And I'd be like, yeah, I have no idea who that is. Everybody throughout the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, up until 2020, I have known every LSU quarterback. If we actually sat down and we went through College Football Reference and went back through each year. But if you had me sit here and name them, I would hit most of them. And then at some point I'd be like, we'd be 1989. I'd be like, is that Tommy Hodson and I'd be like, I forget. And then you throw out the name and I'd be like, just like with Tanner Mangum, I'd be like, I watched the guy play 20 games. I should never have forgotten him. But we get old and forget, I guess. Something else came to mind when I was going to say that. Oh, we played a game at work one time. I thought this was rather interesting. For some people out there that just think I am a college football nerd, which I am, I have also been in the past more of an NFL nerd and Major League Baseball nerd as well. And we're playing a game where they went to some website where it had the number of starts each season for every NFL team at quarterback. So it would say Oakland Raiders 2019 and say David Carr started 14 games, somebody else started one game, somebody else started one game. And then 2018, somebody started 10 games, somebody started 4 games, somebody started one game, somebody started one game. And they just threw out like the Oakland Raiders to me, which the Oakland Raiders are insignificant to me. They're just another NFL team. I have no specific interest in them. But I went all the way back to like the late 60s before I couldn't name an Oakland Raiders, before they caught me on not knowing who the quarterbacks were that started games every season. I enjoy stupid games like that. Okay, let's get to it. Thank you on Tanner Mangum. This makes me want to look up his stats. Because I know he hit the scene. He made those huge plays. They won 2 really big games. And they finished at 9-4 that year. And I do remember the BYU Utah Vegas Bowl game in which I think Utah went up 28-0. And BYU made a furious comeback and lost 35-28. So I'm going to guess. I'm going to guess that Tanner Mangum, that first season starting, threw 19 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. And I could be totally off. Where is he? He threw. Pretty good. 23 touchdowns, 10 picks. And that was his big season. that was his big season, because really that was his freshman season, and he played 13 games, 23 touchdowns, 10 picks, 60% completion percentage. And after that, he only played 4 games as a sophomore, threw 3 touchdowns. Then he only threw 8 touchdowns against 9 picks as a junior in 8 games. And then as a senior, he only played 8 games with 5 touchdowns and 4 picks. He was a flash in the pan, boom, freshman, throws that Hail Mary. Everybody sees it on TV. It's at Nebraska, and then plays a really good season for the most part. It was a little up and down. They got drubbed by Michigan a few weeks later. I remember that being a game that, from a betting standpoint, I jumped on, because BYU came out of the gate. They beat Nebraska. They had the Boise State win. They barely lost to a decent UCLA team, good UCLA team, actually, in 2015. Then they went to Michigan. And I thought, okay, this is, they've rung up too many. They've gotten a little too lucky, been a little too fortunate. And now they're facing a physical defense. And yeah, 31-zip. Good to see Travis here and Lon. Man, everybody jumped on Tanner Mangum. Thank you so much. Great Flair 007 is telling us that BYU is better than Notre Dame. Rarely. Lisa, Tate Martell got scared because he was going to have to compete against Fields, so he left and went to Miami, and he wasn't even done. He hasn't even done anything there either. He can't throw the ball. He can't throw the ball. Tate Martell. I got to think, once he stepped on campus at Ohio State and started throwing the ball, and they were comparing him, watching him play. So this is what, at this point, 2017, that he's on the same field as JT Barrett. Okay, accomplished college quarterback, but not going to impress anyone throwing the football. But Dwayne Haskins and Joe Burrow, and you're going to watch Tate Martell. Now, Tate Martell, tremendous athlete. But just in watching Ohio State spring games and then watching him come into the game and just throw a couple passes against Louisiana Tech in the bowl game last year, I was like, the ball does not come off his hand in any pretty sort of way. Reasonable Gump, why'd that do that? Okay, Reasonable Gump is asking me who has the most Commander-in-Chief cups. If you could tell me what year that started, then I could give it a good guess, because basically what's happened is Army dominated not just the service academy rivalries, but college football across the board throughout the 40s and into the 50s. And Army was good, I believe, somewhere into the 50s. Late 50s, Pete Dawkins, yeah, into the 60s. And then Army was awful after that. I shouldn't say awful. They had some good years in the 60s. But certainly here in the last, we have lived, anyone who's generally my age, lived watching a time in which, especially when Ken Niumatalolo has taken over the reins at Navy, Navy has dominated Army. And throughout the 80s and 90s and 2000s, most of the 2000s early, Army was going 2-9, 3-10. 11-game schedule, if you remember those, prior to about 2002, 2003. A lot of 3-8s, 2-9s for Army, 5-6, 4-7, on and on and on. And Navy was respectable over the last 20 or 30 years. So Navy has certainly won a lot more than Army. Now, Fisher DeBerry and Ken Hatfield had great runs at Air Force in the 80s and 90s. Really good team. So Air Force certainly jumped in there, and they were the better program of the three through much of the 80s and 90s. And Navy's been the best program for the most part over the last 15 years. And now Army's come back and been really good. for their level of play in the last couple of years. So I would need to know when that Commander-in-Chief Cup started. If it's a long-standing deal, which it may be, then it's got to be Army. If we're going back to the 50s or 40s, then I'm going to say Army. If it's something more recent, I'm going to go with Air Force. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
So I'm going to tell you it started in 1972.
Oh, 72.
So what you're
Oh, it's relatively new. 48 years.
Yeah, the Commander-in-Chief's Cup is the three-way rivalry.
Sure.
It's not the Army-Navy one.
No, of course. Yes. I'm going to give it to Air Force then.
You would be correct. Air Force actually holds by a decent,
what's
decent-ish
the total?
Margin. They have 20, Navy has 16, Army's bringing up the rear at 8.
Okay, that's about what I would have expected. Yep. Air Force in the 80s and 90s, Ken Hatfield, Fisher to Perry, had tremendous seasons. Yes, they were really good.
Yeah, just thought I'd throw that out there since we just saw, probably the worst game I've ever seen Navy play.
Yes.
Is it true? I thought I saw someone say that they hadn't even actually tackled in their practice. Did they say that on the TV?
Oh, the coach said that.
I saw someone in your comment section said that.
What
happens when you don't actually tackle.
Their head coach actually said, we did not tackle. We did not even have close contact. We didn't have offensive and defensive linemen hit each other. We didn't have any kind of hitting, tackling of people. We just tackled dummies. We just hit blocking sleds.
Well, then he just gave a lesson to the entire world. That's what happens then.
And so I'm going to reserve my criticism because, first of all, I put the academies in a different place. I just think it's just a totally different deal. What is asked of those guys versus the rest of college football is just different. They're special. They're elevated. So I reserve my judgment and criticism. What they do in competing at a major level, I think is just remarkable. Also, because of what they do, I'm not going to criticize them even if they went out there and lost every game 55-0. And then on top of that, Nehemiah Tololo has been one of the outstanding, most respected coaches in college football for the 13 years he's been at Navy. But I don't understand that if you're going to allow your team to actually play, they're going to be playing other guys on other teams. So you're going to play the schedule and starting with this game here. So they're going to be in the presence of other players and people anyway. So you've got a closed environment where you can test and control that.
There's no better time to start tackling each other.
I don't get it. I don't understand.
I understand you not wanting to actually throw any criticism their way. That's okay. I'll do it for you. Since I'm in a position where I think it's fair for me to do it. I think that's just kind of just strange. Honestly, I don't. If you are actually going to go out and play the real game, why wouldn't you do that with your own players when you are just around the same people every single day? Living. I can go ahead and tell you, service academies are probably going to be the best ones performing at this bubble living style. Since they basically already do live in a bubble. I don't get that. But interestingly enough, I'm sure you're well aware the Mountain West has canceled their season.
Sure.
You're also probably aware that the Air Force is in the Mountain West.
Yes, they're going to play 3 games this year, right? Two
They're going to
games.
play 2 games. Just for when they're going to play Army and Navy.
Yep. Strange. I think
it's
it's
kind of strange, and I can't decide if that would be an advantage, like you and I talked about last night. They don't have to risk any injuries hardly all season, but at the same time, a lot of times until you get a couple games under your belt, you usually just show up on shaky legs. So I'm not sure if they're going to come in and just be all fresh and ready to go and just bully Army and Navy, or they're going to come out and not know how to throw the ball correctly.
So I think there's a threshold there. I think there's a threshold of being fresh versus being rusty. So much like the Ohio State discussion last night, if Ohio State's allowed to win 5 games and then go play in a college football playoff, they probably had enough games to really get their blood circulating, get in sync, get the passing game coordinated, and it's just about right. I'm just taking a shot at 5 games, 6 games, something like that. But they're not worn down. They're not beat up. So I would think 2 games might be a little bit difficult, especially since they're not playing 2 games and then playing somebody else. They're playing 1 game that's going to be their first matchup of the season, of course, against one of them. I don't know who they play first. And then the second game, they're only going to have 1 game under their belt. And they're spread out. I did look at this. They're playing somebody in a week or 2. And then they're playing like 6 weeks later. So I got to think that that's not. And since the team that they're playing second isn't going to be, just beaten down into the ground at that point, it's going to be like week 7 or 8. I would think that that's a slight disadvantage, would be my estimation on that.
Yeah, I would probably lean that way as well. But yeah, so terrible game tonight. I was actually at my parents' house for a little Labor Day little dinner, and I turned it on ESPN, and my mom actually asked if this was real. It's just really, she said, it's just really happening.
Well, there's been so many replays in all sports constantly on TV, for one thing. So, yeah. Yeah.
I would make a slight disagreement with something you said at the beginning of this. So I thought the South Alabama and Southern Miss game was actually a pretty decent game, considering South Alabama was predicted to lose by 2 touchdowns.
Well, my point was,
it wasn't even a blowout on either side. I think they won by 10, 11 points.
Yeah, they won by 11. The point I was making is that typically we're sitting here on a Saturday night, and of course, the more volume you have, then the more possibility that you have great games. But even if we just have a handful, like on our typical weekend after watching 7 or 8 football games, we've got a couple 2-3 games that were just jaw droppers, that we're just talking about this amazing catch and throw at the end of the game, or this 4th down stand at the goal line, or whatever it was. We've had nothing that there was any drama in the last 5 minutes of the game. Nothing. And we've had 3 shutouts out of like 7 games. Just complete annihilations. We've had to it's really been bad football from a viewing standpoint.
Well, let's see if this UAB Miami game can be any better. Because if it's still Miami from last year, we might have a decent game.
I expect UAB to go down there and show up, and I don't think they back down. They're used to playing this kind of game once or twice a year, in which they play superior athletes. And we had our Miami show the other day, and I kind of went through what UAB's done. Now, it's not been very impressive. They've played the likes of Texas A&M and Florida, and I'm trying to think who else in recent years. They play 1 or 2 of these games every year, and they haven't fared too well. They've generally been beaten by 3 to 4 touchdowns. A lot of 41-17, not where they're completely annihilated, but Florida was 4-7 a couple of years ago before Dan Mullen got there, Muschamps last year, or McElwain's last year, and they beat UAB 36-7. So, but Miami doesn't seem to put teams away like that. Miami, Wisconsin's not a great team. They're really good. We know what Wisconsin is every year. They were a good team last year. They were one of the 15 best teams in the country, something in that range. And in Miami, they played Central Michigan last year, and they barely got off the field 17-12. Ugly, could have lost, maybe should have lost. put up 17 points against the MAC team. That same MAC team turns around and Wisconsin beats them 61-0. Miami lost to Duke. They lost to FIU. They lost to Louisiana Tech, got shut out. And I know they're supposed to be different this year, and maybe Georgia Tech. So, yeah, I'm going to have to look at that line and maybe make my first play of the year on UAB. I don't know if they're going to get 2 touchdowns. Maybe.
Yeah. I'm telling you, man, there are some people who are picking Miami to make some noise in the ACC. They're really thinking Nathan Diaz is going to have a good second year.
I know, and I'm contemplating being one of those people. But I've pretty much made my predictions, so that's about to be released here in the next day or two. And, yeah.
While we're on the subject, so I've been watching you for a while, and I've always noticed that even back a few years ago, you've always seemed to have some sort of connection with Miami, like a special one, even before you started doing like live shows with different teams and stuff.
Okay.
May I ask, like, what that can do? You have family in Miami or something?
So this is funny because I've got no connection to anybody anywhere when it comes to college football, other than my beloved Buckeyes, of course. And that I don't have any connections. It's just that is where I grew up. So the whole Miami thing is that I started this channel, and I basically just got on here and I previewed all the football games and I talked about all the football games, and I relied on nobody else. So if I was going to give you the Michigan-Wisconsin preview for this week, I was going to do all the research and talk. And then at some point it dawned on me that, okay, and nobody seemed to complain, like, you don't know what you're talking about. Get somebody on here who knows what they're talking about. Nobody seemed to mind. But at one point, I determined that there are about 3 different reasons why I should bring other people on here. Number one, if I get the Michigan beat writer to talk the Michigan-Wisconsin game, obviously he's going to know a lot more about Michigan football than me. So it provides better information. It's another voice for discussion. And also, if I can then use that person who hopefully is insightful, entertaining, whatever they bring to the table, and then I use their platform, that's going to get the link to the video out there if they share it on social media. Or in the early stages of this, I was able to build enough relationships with guys on SB Nation that they would actually post the videos on SB Nation. That's probably something I should be pursuing now, because I didn't have anywhere near the following. I had a couple hundred subscribers, and I was getting probably 10 or 12 or 15 different SB Nation sites to post my videos when I would discuss the games with their people. And that's really where the foothold on Miami came, is that Cam Underwood from State of the U would post my videos on the Miami SB Nation website, which is very popular. And so they just came over to my channel in droves. And so I've got Miami fans that I need to serve. And there is no other connection to Miami. I could care less about Miami. I don't care if they go 0-11 this year. And there are Canes fans watching me right now that somehow think I have some kind of vested interest and I root for Miami football. And I could care less about Miami football again. I could care less if they go 0-11. It makes no difference to me. That I've stated this a number of times when people complain about what teams I cover. If it were up to me, my approach would solely be everybody's on equal footing. Kansas is just as good as LSU, is just as good as Stanford at the start. And then obviously I'm going to cover the better teams and the better games and give them more attention, but I'm going to try to do my best to cover everybody. But we're going to obviously focus on the elite teams and the best games. And that's going to be the only thing that's going to factor into my decision. Well, the decision also has to be based on who's going to watch what and the popularity. And if for some reason all of a sudden people want to hear me talk about Iowa State and Kansas, then I'm going to talk about Iowa State and Kansas, even if they're going 2-10. So it's a combination of how popular the teams and the videos are versus how good the teams and the games and the matchups are. And then also, what guests can I get on to represent those teams? Right now, I don't have anybody to come on here and talk Tennessee football. I've probably reached out to like seven or eight Tennessee beat writers, and nobody's responded, or they have, but then they don't get back to me. So, for example, I haven't talked Tennessee football. I would like to. Texas A&M. I would like to have a Texas A&M guy on here. I used to have a Tennessee guy, a couple different ones that would come on here all the time, but now I don't. So I don't have a whole lot to say about Tennessee in depth.
You've never had anything good to say about Tennessee either. So.
Well, that's what you're going to say, at least. That's your interpretation.
That's mostly what you've been saying too. I tried to come on here and defend Tennessee one time from you. And
I don't have anything good to say about Tennessee.
When you were talking about college blue bloods that one time, and you refused to put Tennessee in there, I came on here and said you were wrong because they have a lot of championships and they're still number 10 in all time wins. You weren't having that.
Yeah, so it's funny doing these live streams with these specific teams because there is a group of Florida State fans that think that I am favoring Florida State, and as long as they like that and think that, and I watch Florida. Like I came out and said something negative about Florida State, and somebody commented that I'm turning my back on Florida State, and I said, well, my back was never turned in the other direction. I have no allegiance to Florida State. Could care less about Florida State. But they thought I was turning my back on Florida State because I had said some nasty things about Florida State and said that they weren't very good or whatever I said.
Right.
So people need to understand that I'm trying not to have any allegiances.
All right.
So that's
Quick
my take.
Question before I go.
Yep.
Out of actually every team, including Division 1, 2, 3. Yeah, Division 1, 2, and 3. Yeah, it's a Division 1. Which team has won the least amount of games at a flat 600?
Okay, so these are all FBS schools, correct?
Yes.
Who's
actually? This is including FCS schools.
See, I may not do too well there.
But the team is a Power 5 school.
Okay. Interesting.
I'll narrow it down further. It's a Big 12 school.
You don't need to do. Oh, you didn't need to do that for me. Kansas obviously comes to mind, but I'm going to say Iowa State.
Well, you got the state part right, but it is not. It is Oklahoma State.
Oklahoma State has the least number of wins amongst
they have
all
the least number of wins.
FBS schools?
At 109. They are ranked 109.
For as decent as they've been in the last 20 years? Wow.
They have a flat 600 wins and have lost 557.
Huh.
Now, there are schools who have lost more than they've won, such as Vanderbilt.
Okay.
Vanderbilt's played more games.
I was going to say
they've won 609.
Okay. Because
but they've also lost 629.
Okay, so they played the least amount of football, possibly, as well. So they don't have the worst winning percentage. I was kind of going the winning percentage route. I know
Vanderbilt does indeed bring up the rear at winning percentage.
Okay. I'm guessing Mississippi State's is pretty bad, too.
Who's?
Mississippi State. Their all-time winning percentage is pretty bad.
I'm not seeing them in the bottom 10. I see NC State. Or no, your favorite team, Rutgers, is second category. Second to last, it is.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense.
But to our topic last night, actually, Alabama is tied with Texas right now at 9-16. But we are breathing down the Buckeyes' neck right now because we were 8 behind. Y'all are 9-24, and Michigan's actually still way out in front. I don't think anyone's catching them.
Oh, in terms of wins, I was talking about winning percentage. Yeah, Michigan still has 30 wins on Ohio State, something like that.
So yeah, 38. But yeah,
that'll take about maybe about 6 years to wipe that out.
It's status quo remains. I mean, you're
I'm exaggerating.
4 games more than them a year, so yeah.
But if there's a lot of 11-1s versus a lot of 8-4s, I guess it's going to take a while. It's still going to take 13, 14 years, and we can't expect Ohio State to be better than Michigan every year, or can we? I don't know.
Or can we? No, if you want to talk about winning percentage, though, it's almost impossible to distinguish because you got both of y'all are at 7-9, but the Notre Dame's at 7-8, and Alabama's at 7-7.
Yeah, I think I mentioned that in our discussion the other night. It
really takes a lot of games to actually even change numbers like that because there's just so many games.
Sure.
I mean, you would need to win probably another 10 games in a row before that decimal would go up.
Yeah, I think I had mentioned that during our discussion that somebody had figured out something in the range of...
So someone figured out that if Ohio State ran the table and then won their last game against Michigan, then it would actually bump their winning percentage up to 1 to 1,000th above them.
Yes.
That would be hilarious. I'm kind of rooting for that to happen right now. Just as I'm rooting for Notre Dame to win the ACC.
Oh, I am too.
Hilarious.
I am too. I am rooting for Notre Dame. That might be a first.
All right. Anyway, you have a good night.
Okay, man.
Hopefully, the next game we see is maybe the next game we see both teams will actually have practiced before play instead of just one.
Yes, they'll have to remind the players that hitting is involved in this sport. Yes. Okay, man. Thanks for the call.
See you, man.
See you. Reasonable Gump always brings some good stuff to the table. All right. Not you, Stexer. If the conference won't play, then the teams are honor bound to find a way to play without the conference. Yeah, I got to tell you, Lisa, what a joke if they have another vote tomorrow and then they come out. They are raising hopes, and the backlash, if they come back with another no vote, is going to be unbearable. Ryan Day's been pretty vocal, but yeah, Jim Harbaugh has made a late rush here, of which I'm going to be asked tomorrow on Michigan Podcast to comment on Jim Harbaugh's leadership and his standoff with the Michigan University. And when I say Michigan University, I know it is the University of Michigan and not Michigan University, but the University of Michigan president. And I'll have to come up with something to say about that. Because right now I'm in favor of what Jim Harbaugh is doing. And I think he was probably just waiting, thinking that there was this release of the schedule. There was the cancellation 3 or 4 days later. There was the backlash and the uproar, and that he was going to stay faithful and loyal to see the process through to a certain extent and see if once voices were heard that there would be a change of direction. And once he saw that the clock was ticking, that he needed to intervene. And now with this vote scheduled, that he knows that when you've only got 14 entities voting, that every vote is pretty critical. And so he's seeing a close vote. He knows it was 11-3 against, And so he wants to be on the right side of this and wants his school to vote for football. So he wants two things here. He would like, of course, ultimately, regardless of who votes for what, the total vote to be in favor of playing football, because then regardless of who voted yes and who voted no, his team is going to be playing football this year. But I also believe that, being a Michigan man, that he wants it to be on the record that his school voted to play football. I think, based on the conversations I've had with our Ohio State contributors, and we should have another Ohio State Live coming up on Friday, that there are a lot of relationships that have been strained, to be kind, have been strained in the Big Ten, and the relationship there between Harbaugh and the president, between the president and a number of factions within the Michigan community, between Nebraska, for as vocal as they've been in the Big Ten, especially being a new member. There are a lot of strained relationships in the Big Ten. This is going to have lasting effects, not necessarily that can be quantified, but that we're going to see play out in how this league is conducted and run in the future. Bo Weevil, if I could pull back the video that I posted years and years ago, must have been 2013, 2014, when Rutgers and Maryland were voted into the Big Ten, believe me, I went on a rampage about that. David, we don't need to do that necessarily, the October 10th with the no bye weeks. We need the bye weeks, number one, for the athletes themselves. During a traditional season, we need bye weeks. Not that we didn't play football years and years ago, and Ohio State's going to be the classic example of this. In their national championship season of 2002, they played 13 consecutive weeks without a bye week, and so teams routinely played without bye weeks then. But in this day and age, the student athletes have become accustomed to bye weeks. They can play, I've worked it out, October 24th can be week one for the Big Ten. They can play with a couple weeks off, but they would have to play through Christmas. They could take Christmas week off. That could be one of their bye weeks, but play with 2 bye weeks starting October 24th and catch up to the college football playoff and be able to have their champion considered for the college football playoff. But October 10th would be a date in which they would have more room for postponements and cancellations and rescheduling of games. They would have just more flexibility within the schedule, of course. And they could also get on the field at a time when everybody else is already on the field. You know, they don't want to start October 24th. They shouldn't. They could, as I just outlined. But on October 24th, you're looking at the ACC playing on September 12th. So we're looking 12, 19, 26, 3, it's like week 7. So ACC teams are going to be 7 weeks deep, and like a Clemson's going to be 7-0, and Ohio State's going to be 1-0. So then Clemson's going to be 10-0, and Ohio State's going to be 4-0. And then basically the ACC, the SEC, and the Big 12 will play their championship games. And it's going to be week maybe 6 for the Big Ten, and they're just going to continue to play while those other teams are taking off. Then I worked in a bye week at the end of the Big Ten schedule to prepare for the college football playoff, and they can catch up. But it's not going to be the best. It's going to be kind of awkward. It's going to be difficult. Think about this. If their first week was October 24th and the first college football playoff rankings come out November 17th, they're going to be ranking the Big Ten teams having played 4 games against teams that have played 10 games, 9 games, something like that. which is going to be strange to have to make that comparison. Okay, so Anthony, we've got conflicting information here. McD thinks there only have to be 6 votes. And Anthony says a vote of 9-5 to pass. That 9-5 is a figure that I had read in the past. So that comes to mind of me seeing that in a number of places when this was first talked about weeks and weeks ago, 9-5. I don't know that. I can't verify that. I'm not going to go searching on the internet right now. But that's the number I remember seeing as well. Yes, Lisa, we've outlined this. It's not going to work at all. It's going to be a laughing stock if the Big Ten starts playing Thanksgiving weekend and they're playing their week 1 while everybody's playing their big rivalry games, and people are, college football fans are into the races toward conference championships and college football playoff appearances, and the Big Ten's playing games 1 and 2. It's not going to work. They're not going to be factored into the playoff, and they're going to be playing meaningless games, and it's going to be a total joke on social media and by College Football Nation and fans and pundits and even me to laugh and point at the Big Ten saying, why are you playing your week 6 or week 5? Think about this. Those college football playoff semifinal games are typically on a Friday night. Can you imagine a college football playoff semifinal weekend on a Friday night of playoff games, and then the Big Ten's playing like week 5 the next day? Meaningless week 5 games. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, who's on the line?
Hey, it's George, Mark.
Hey, George. What's up?
Have you ever seen that movie called Draft Day with Kevin Costner?
Yes.
I just watched it for the first time.
Oh, okay.
That was a good movie.
Yeah. I don't know that I would have thought it was a great movie if I wasn't interested in football or the NFL draft. But since I am, I tend to like movies like that.
Now that we're all on solitary confinement, sitting at home, it's a good movie.
Yeah, everything's a good movie. Sure. Under those
If
circumstances.
you're on solitary confinement, that's how you have to look at it. Anyways, I just called to voice my displeasure with BYU winning by so many points. I think that was cruel and unusual punishment. I don't think it gives credence to our first responders, the Navy, and they should have let them score 34 points. I mean, come on. I will hate BYU forever now. Shame on them.
Okay.
Yeah. It almost makes me question the whole Mormon religion. You want to go out and embarrass the Navy? Like, shame on them. Couldn't even make a game out of it.
Yes.
Yeah,
So,
like, we decimated Navy on a coronavirus year when nobody got to practice. Like, but I hope they lose every other game. I hate BYU now.
well, I've looked at their schedule, and they're not losing too many more games, if any.
All right.
This might be their toughest game of the year.
You never know. Maybe their whole team will get the coronavirus because of this.
Well, then they're not going to lose those games. They're not going to play them.
Hey, are we far enough along we can make coronavirus jokes now? It's freaking insane, Mark. I got to go. I'm not going to try to torture you or your viewing audience, but the first thing I saw on the internet this morning was that Stanford University and another John Hopkins or some big university, 2 universities, studied all the fake numbers we have, right? And they said you have a 1 in 19 million chance of getting sick or dying from coronavirus. That's the news. That was the news. It's true. 1 in 19 million. I'm going to buy a lottery ticket. I feel lucky.
So this is you pouring out your heart and soul to me.
Yeah. I don't know where to start or begin, but I just can't believe they did that to Navy. Shame on them. Shame on you, BYU.
It looked like they did all they could to try to ease up on them, George, if anything.
That's true. It's that gosh darn coronavirus. I blame it all on the coronavirus. All right, I'm going to ease up on BYU. They might be a half decent football team.
Yeah, give them another chance. They're
one
going to
more
be.
chance.
They're going to be
No,
playing
no.
Army. They're going to play
Good
Army
people
here in the
might
next couple of weeks. We'll have to see how they treat Army. Okay, check that one out.
Yeah. Hey, no one ever tells people things like this, but as a Florida Gator fan, you know what the number one game in my mind in Florida Gator history is that sticks out the most? It's when Nebraska or somebody beat us 63-3
Sure.
in a New Year's Day bowl. You remember that game?
I do.
I was just like, what the heck?
It was in the Fiesta
happened?
Bowl for the national championship.
What was that guy's name? Lawrence something?
Lawrence Phillips.
Kept running over everybody.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that guy.
You guys scored
I want
24
him on my
points.
team.
Give your Gators a little more credit. It was 62-24.
Yeah, wow. That powerful Southeastern Conference lost by 40. All right. I hope Miami makes it in the playoffs. I hope we still have electricity by the time we get to play playoffs. Hey, I live in Portland today, and they told us three days ago that the wind was going to shift and come from the east, except the weather goes from west to east. You know what I mean? We got this thing called an ocean right there. But it happened. In the whole sky, they smoked this out today, and they said it was a wildfire. I couldn't believe it. It looked like it was dusk at like 1 in the afternoon. Like it was Mad Max, end of the world. The trees were bending over. But they told us about it 3 days ago. Like, hey, guess what's going to happen in 3 days? It's freaking scary.
All right, George. Well, just stay safe out there. You know, the apocalypse seems to be closer to you than anybody else that calls this show.
I gave my notice to my landlord a couple of days ago.
Okay.
I have to move now within 30 days. So if any of your viewers have any good ideas where to go, I'm looking for a piece of property with a cave on it and fresh water. I unincorporated, off grid. And I'm willing to pay cash money.
All right, George, we're going to leave you with this. My tip for next time is that you secure the next dwelling, rent, or purchase before you give your notice at your current location.
No, we've had riots here 100 days in a row. I'm going to die if I stay here. I got to get the heck out of here.
Okay.
Man.
All right. Well, stay safe, George.
I'll be serious about that twice tonight. I'm maturing as a person.
You're getting around that at age 60?
I said heck twice, Mark.
You did. You did a fine job here. This might be your first call ever without spewing the F word or other
And next time
profanities.
I'm going to say, gosh darn it.
Okay? I'll be looking forward to that. And maybe you could throw in a gee whiz, and you could throw in a giving them the business. You could do that.
My golly, wow.
Yep, we could take one of those. All right, George, got some other folks calling in. You stay safe.
All right. Hopefully God saves us and he keeps college football. That's my hope.
Amen to that.
Talk to you later.
The incomparable George, who has the unofficial title, although it is technically got to be the case, of leaving the most comments of any viewer of all time. It's not close. It's not close and will never be changed or altered in any way that George has left the most comments here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. And for some reason, YouTube has decided, with all their analytics and all the numbers that they throw us, the metrics and so forth as YouTubers, which is great. I love the numbers. I want to know the viewers and demographics and all the other things that they give us. They used to let us know how many comments were coming in. So I could set a date range and it would tell me you've received 8,217 comments in the last 30 days or whatever. They don't do that anymore.
The call will start at the beep.
I don't know why. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hello. Aiden here.
Who's this?
I just wanted to talk about Pitt football.
Sure, we can talk Pitt.
How do you think they're going to do this year? Because I'm pretty optimistic.
So I released a video a couple days ago, and I believe my record for Pitt was 5-6. But I certainly said, as has been the case, as has been the
don't mean to be. Oh my gosh.
as has been the case, as has been the case for this program and for most of the teams in the ACC for umpteen years. There's not a whole lot of separation between most of the teams on their schedule and them, just like was the case last year in going 7-5.
Okay, yeah, I understand. What do you think their odds if they pull off the upset at Death Valley? I mean, Clemson, Pitt.
Well, they did it last time, of course.
They did.
In 2016.
But this is a different team, I agree.
Sure.
But that defense with Parents Ford.
I think they've got a puncher's chance. I think that they've got about I gave them like an 8% chance of winning that game.
All right, thank you.
So basically, if you go there 10 times, you win once.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to be shocked. I'm not one of these people that think that Clemson and teams like that can't lose any games. That it's ridiculous to say that Pitt could beat them or Louisville could beat them, somebody like that. I think there's a handful of capable teams in the ACC that could beat them.
Mm-hmm.
So what's going to make Pitt better this year than they were last year? Especially since you miss Jalen Twyman.
Yeah, we are missing Jalen Twyman, but we got some playmakers on the outside. We got a couple young freshman receivers, Jalen Barton, I believe, and one of our freshmen is starting at kick returner as well. So, and Pickett is going to be in the second year in Whipple's offense. So I think he's only going to develop as a senior. That's just me, because I think Twyman's a big piece, but I think that defense is still very solid. So if that offense can take the next step, I'm very excited. So
basically, Pickett's had to deal with different coordinators during his first few years, but this is going to be the first time he's had the same coordinator 2 consecutive years.
No, but it's his second year in the system. And It's a much more pass-happy offense.
Well, yeah. What I found interesting in looking at Pitt, I think this was last year, was that they went from one of the teams that ranked top 5 in the nation in most rushing attempts. This was around 2016-17 to ranking in the top 5 in the nation in passing attempts just a couple years later. They completely flipped the run-pass ratio.
Definitely. So we lost we had Quadri Olafson a couple years ago.
Sure.
And now we just have a couple of young guys like AJ Davis. So Pickett's got to kind of carry the load for him. I don't know. I'm just excited for his new year.
And from what I remember, AJ Davis was one of your highest rated recruits in recent years.
Yeah. So we've been playing pretty well. So yeah. Thank you, man.
Sure. Thanks for the call. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
So Pitt's got Austin Peay coming up on Saturday. Let's go to a scout's view on Pitt football from Athlon's here. So they've got a little section for all these teams in which they have an opposing coach who is anonymous comment on that particular team. So caller, hang on just a second. I'm going to read this real quick. This is an opposing coach's view on Pitt football. You know what you're going to get here. This is the team that looks basic on film, and then you get into a fight before the game and a fight during the game, and they try to fight you after. That's all Pat Narduzzi. He is that team. That personality is how they carry themselves. They're going to hold you, press man coverage, get personal fouls, goad you into all of it. Pat is a great defensive mind, but he needs to learn that the team reflects the head coach. They ride too hot and cold. They swing too much because that's how he's acting on the sideline. They're not as good running the ball as they think they are. They're going to have to get better and more creative there. Even in the new offense, it has to work when they hit you with that change up after the passes. Don't know what that means. Mark Whipple is a really good schematic guy. They just didn't have what they needed last season. Schematically, they give you problems no one else in this conference does. Their upside is the front seven. They're going to disrupt you. Kenny Pickett is a solid game manager, but could maybe develop into something more. They really could win 9 or 10 games this season if the offensive line gets better and they fix the scoring problems. Well, a lot of teams could say that. If you fix your offensive line and your scoring problems, then you could win 9 or 10 games. All right, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, it's Johnny. I'm a sophomore from North Dakota State.
Hey, Johnny.
I was just calling, wondering, what do you think about NDSU just playing one game this year as of now?
Yeah, so they're playing. I heard about this, and who in the world are they playing? Why am I blanking on this? Who's the game against?
Central Arkansas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so somebody brought this to my attention. It's sometime in October?
Yeah, October 3rd. Yep.
Well, I think it's really strange. But at the same time, boy, I don't know what to think of that. You're kind of going out there playing a Super Bowl game. You're just saying, okay, we're going to practice all this time. Let's let it all hang on the line. And unfortunately, nobody's going to pay attention to it because it's Central Arkansas and it's whatever. And nothing can be really gained from it in terms of playing for a championship. As long as the players and everybody involved buys into it. When I found that out, it was probably a month ago, something like that. And I was even thinking, okay, what do you do with your team? Do you just kind of work out, have them hit the weights, work out, stay in shape, but really kind of take it easy until maybe a couple weeks before the game?
Yeah. It's really bizarre, to be honest. I was hoping we'd schedule at least like 3 games or something, but I mean, I guess I appreciate just one game, you know, something to watch from our team. Because I think our team was going to be really good, returning a lot of guys on offense. I was really excited for the Oregon game, of course.
Oh, of course. Yeah, that was the opener, and people were pegging that as a possible upset. And you guys obviously have a great run of success there against your level and against the Power 5.
Yeah, truly. But I think it would have been interesting against Oregon. I was really excited for that because I think Oregon had a really good defense, and it would have been our strength versus their strength, you know, on the field there.
Yeah, that would have been fun to watch. Of course, you would have had to face a first-time starting quarterback. Regardless of the talent of Tyler Shook, just putting him in a place where he's never faced that level of competition, first time out, and possibly getting him rattled and confusing him possibly would have been interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you make of Trey Lance? Do you think he is deserving of some of his first round hype? What do you think?
Well, I've only seen highlights of him. I've only seen clips. I've never sat down and watched a game. So I would think in this day and age that nobody's artificially hyped or suppressed in regards to scouting reports. You know, if this was 1970, him playing at North Dakota State, he'd be off the radar. But now everybody's discovered and everybody's found as long as they have talent. So he must be really legit to be at that school and gaining that kind of attention. But I've only seen, you know, again, I see the 3 highlights on Saturday that they show, or I look up to see North Dakota State and to see him. But anything past that, so you're obviously going to see the best moments. You're not going to see him making mistakes or missed throws or a bad decision.
Yeah.
So I haven't seen that.
Yeah, I think our offense also really helped him last year, where he wasn't put in super tough situations in most of the game. But so my final question is, if you were to do a ranking, would you include NDSU in the top 25 of like FBS teams? If you could include FCS teams, would you make them top 25?
Are we talking about this year?
Yeah.
Or when they're
going
actually
into the season. Like, if they were to play among the FBS, would you think they would be a top 25 team this year, or not? I'm just curious.
That's a great question. It's a great question because they are the gold standard of the FCS in regards to looking at what they've been able to do against. Minnesota comes to mind, Kansas State, those kind of programs when they play their one game, usually their one game, sometimes it's been two, I think, against the Power Five, and they either win the games or they play well and they look like they belong.
Right.
But I think we also have to consider that they've rarely played a team that's been that highly ranked or ranked at all in the top 25.
Yeah.
They're usually playing good teams, decent teams, but not, they're not scheduling Ohio State, Michigan, and Wisconsin.
Right.
And then there's the factor of, okay, is this team up for the one game? And then it's kind of difficult to judge what they're doing the rest of the season versus what everybody else is doing. I got to think, and this is just an estimation based on how they've performed most years, and since they've got the best quarterback they've ever had from a talent standpoint at the school, that they're probably, let's say the Big Ten and the Pac-12 and everybody was playing, and it's not this crazy year that it is, that everybody's playing and preparing for the season. I would think that they generally field a team that's one of the top 70 teams in the country. Like if they were moved into the FBS with the 130 teams, that they'd be in the 50 to 70 range most of the time.
Okay.
And, I'm just spitballing it.
It's tough to say because, Oregon was going to be that test we needed this year. Because I think the last FBS team we played was 2016, so it's been a while. It's tough.
Okay.
To really tell.
Let's see here. Let's see if I can. I don't think they're going to be in this list. I was just going to look back on some of these games, but like you say, so you're telling me it's been since 2016.
I believe so. Yeah, that's when we beat Iowa when they were ranked like 13 at the time. Of course.
Yeah. So you beat an Iowa team, like you say, they were ranked 13th. They didn't finish 13th, but they 2016 they were probably like an 8-5 team. So Iowa was a top 40 team legitimately. Let's see if I can find a list, and this will refresh my memory. I remember that Iowa game. I remember you guys playing Minnesota a few times.
Right. We got Kansas State, and then there was Colorado State in there as well.
Yeah, I remember you beating Kansas State.
Yeah.
No, it's going to take me forever to sort through this because this has everybody. Okay. North Dakota State.
I think our next FBS test is Arizona, so I'm excited to see what might happen there. I don't know. I think it's 2022, but I don't believe next year we play an FBS school, so we'll have to wait on that. But yeah, I'm just really curious to see how we stack up against that competition. Of course, I don't really think personally that we're going to move up to FBS anytime soon, just for really multiple reasons. But it would be very interesting, of course, with the dominance we've had at the FCS level.
Yeah, it's the same thing we battle with to a certain extent, but even more so when you talk about the UCFs of the world in Boise State and Memphis, and trying to rank theirs. Because if you look at the top 25 most years, you've got your 0 and 1 loss teams, the LSUs and Ohio States and all them in the top 5 to 10. Then you start to see the 2 and 3 loss teams, the Wisconsins and Notre Dames and Auburns and so forth and so on. And then it's, where is somebody going to determine that a group of 5 team, a Memphis, Cincinnati, UCF belongs? And so then you see, it seems to be that generally there's this judgment that those teams that go 12 and 1, 11 and 2 in the FB or in the group of 5, that they're pretty much on par with like an 8 and 5. Like if you look at the final rankings, this is almost holds true every year. Like between about 15 and 25 in the rankings, you see the 9 and 4s and the 8 and 5s on the Power 5 level, mixed in with like the 11 and 2s from the group of 5. And that seems to be everybody's rough judgment of what that means, about that those teams are comparable, if that makes any sense to you.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess, do you think this might be the year that like a group of 5 team could sneak into the playoffs?
Well, so on the surface, you would think with the Big Ten and the Pac-12 eliminated, if the Big Ten doesn't play, that so we've narrowed this down to 3 conferences that have a total of 14 and 14, 28, 38 teams, plus Notre Dame, 39 teams. And BYU's schedule is so weak, I looked at it. This is probably on paper the best game that they've played. The best team that they're going to play is Navy, maybe Army. So BYU could go 8-0, but is not going to get considered because they have pieced together a schedule that's awful. So you've got like 39 or 40 teams is all you've got, and then the group of 5. So that would make it seem like that there would be a shot, especially if there's a league that cannibalizes itself. Let's say the Big 12, that Oklahoma's not as good as they typically are, and they produce a 3-loss champion in the Big 12. You know, Oklahoma goes 10-3, or Texas goes 10-3 and wins the Big 12. But the problem is that all these opportunities for the group of 5 have been taken away by the cancellation of all the non-conference games. And that's usually what they have to do, is be able to, for the group of 5 to make the playoff, basically they have to luck out in scheduling, because they're always scheduling somebody. You know, the better teams are scheduling. Cincinnati scheduled Ohio State last year, and UCF has scheduled, you know, Pitt and Georgia Tech and those types of teams. So they have to hope that the teams that they schedule are the really good teams and that they win that game, and then they go through their conference and don't lose any games. So they need 3 things to hit. And those opportunities have been taken away. So it's going to be difficult to judge like an American Conference champion. Let's say Cincinnati wins the American Conference and they go 12-1. Well, it's going to be difficult to judge because they didn't have that one game against that they were going to have to be able to prove that they can play at that level.
Yeah, I think we might see more, you know, maybe one or if not a few undefeated group of 5 teams, because they have less tests against Power 5 teams. But yeah, like you said, I don't know if that's going to be enough.
Yeah. So the interesting call would be if, again, I'll just call it Oklahoma goes 10-3 after a conference championship game win, and Cincinnati's sitting there 13-0. Who are they going to take?
Yeah. Right.
Now, if Oklahoma's 11-2 even, who do they take? If they've only lost once, I don't think that they're going to hesitate to take the Power 5 champion. But if it's 2 or 3 losses against an undefeated American Conference, especially with the American Conference's track record against the Power 5, which has been really good.
Yeah, it's like the Power 6, you know, the P6, they call themselves.
Sure.
Yeah. That would be interesting. I honestly hope some chaos happens like that. That'd
I do too. I always hope for chaos.
Yeah. That's always really fun to see. But I appreciate you having me on your show, and I love the show.
Thanks for the call. Appreciate it, man. Have a good one.
Yep. Bye.
All right. I think we'll wrap it up at 1 a.m. Again, we've got a huge Tuesday here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, 2 o'clock. We're live at 2 o'clock Eastern time with Miami Talk, prepping the UAB game. Going to release the 10-Minute War over on Michigan podcast, and later here at Mark Rogers TV. We're taping that at 3:15 tomorrow. 6 p.m. is Florida State football talk. Florida State live at 6, usually at 7, 6 tomorrow. And then at 7:30, 2 hours of ACC preview with Mike McDaniel from SI.com. Right here, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Thank you so much, everyone, for jumping in. We'll see you tomorrow at 2 p.m., 6 p.m., and 7:30. And after I do 2 other podcasts with other folks on their platforms, I think I will have done a day, and will be rewarding myself late night tomorrow night with something. I don't know. Anyway, we'll catch you all later. Thanks for the support.